Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Jeremy Beaman. Jeremy, you've written about how the green agenda may be a peacetime luxury, and a lot of the policies that various governments, including our own, but European governments as well, have wanted to pursue, kind of being put on the back burner with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Talk about that a little bit.
We have to be careful about how we talk about this, because it's certainly, they haven't turned a 180 and sort of embraced fossil fuels in a new way. They haven't had a change of heart. They still want to go green, but in the short term, they're having to revert back to coal, especially, which many countries wanted to phase out, over the next 2-3 years. Now, basically, all of Europe is committed to before 2030 to retire coal. But there have been plant retirements that are sort of being reversed now. In Austria, in particular, the Brits, they are considering keeping coal plants open longer. They're having to wrestle with this issue, especially of a gas shortage, which this issue has gotten worse since we spoke last in the last few weeks, because the Russians have cut down gas supplies to the EU, and so they'd been planning on having all this supply and being able to put stuff in storage, put gas in storage for this winter, and now supplies have been throttled even further. And so to conserve that gas, they're going to have to start burning coal. And so again, they've been clear, the Europeans have, that they're not sort of changing their mind all of a sudden. They've been pricing carbon since 2005 in Europe, and that's not going to change. But to get through tomorrow, to keep their economies afloat, to keep the power on, they're going to have to burn more coal. They don't necessarily want to, but they kind of have to.
And the United States has had some of this, had to contend with some of these issues as well.
Yeah, but it's been less restrictive in the United States. The United States still has like 230 operating coal plants. Austria retired its last one in 2020. That's the one they're going to bring back for emergencies. So we're kind of talking about different levels
scale,
of coal, different scale to be sure. But because of higher gas prices, even in the U.S. too, which they're much lower than in Europe, natural gas prices that is. Power generators have been turned into coal. They turned to coal more last year in 2021. Power generation from coal was up because gas was more expensive. Usually lower gas prices incentivizes them to switch to gas, but it's sort of reversing now, and they're switching back to coal in some cases. And so, yeah, it's a similar story here in the U.S., but the problem is particularly acute in Europe.
Now, Europeans, when they go on vacation, they call it a holiday. President Biden wants a holiday in the United States, but it's going to be from the gas tax, particularly the federal gas tax, if he can get Congress to go along. Talk a little bit about, there had been discussion that this might happen, but a lot of people had dismissed it as a gimmick and said that it wouldn't. But now Biden is calling for it.
Yeah, it didn't come out of nowhere. So several Senate Democrats backed this back in February, before the war in Ukraine even began. The gas prices, of course, were ticking up before then. And so you had some Democrats, and two in particular, who are running for re-election and wanted something tangible.
Competitive races.
Exactly, very competitive races, Mark Kelly, Maggie Hassan. So, so they wanted this to be something that the federal government could do to lower prices. And of course, the Biden administration, the White House, didn't endorse the idea at the time. It took them several months to come around and sort of talk about it. Fizzled really until Biden kind of exhausted some of the options most immediately available to him. And so he's come around and endorsed this gas tax holiday. It's a little different than the proposal that was introduced in Congress, which wanted which would have, or would, they could still pass this one, I guess. Would extend the tax holiday through the end of the year. Biden just asked for 3 months for diesel and gasoline. And yeah, again, this is a tangible thing that Biden wants to be able to point to say that we're doing everything we can to lower prices. Critics of this decision, there have been a range sort of criticism or objections. One is this won't do very much. The gasoline tax is about 18 cents a gallon. For diesel, it's 24 cents. So it's kind of marginal, for the individual while he or she's paying at the pump. But in the aggregate, the White House has put an estimate on it that it would cost about $10 billion to the Highway Trust Fund, which of course these taxes fund. And so in total, it would cost a lot of money toward that end. But for individuals, it's not sort of the grand solution necessarily. The other objections have been that as I just mentioned, that it'll pull transportation funding away. And this has been the objection among some members of Congress, and also from Democrats at the state level, and some Republicans at the state level. The opposition to this tax holiday is not cut cleanly across partisan lines. In fact, the state of Maryland, for example, were one of the first to pass a tax holiday after the war in Ukraine began. The leaders in the state legislature after that, who supported that tax holiday, have since said, we're not going to reinstate it because we need this money for
revenue.
Yeah, exactly. Virginia, Virginia Senate just voted it down, basically with leaders on the same grounds. And so, again, it's not a sort of clean partisan issue. You have these several Democrats in Washington who support it, but others who do not. And it's hard to say that this would likely pass.
So the Biden administration, in addition to calling for this gas tax holiday, has been kind of hanging with their frenemies in the oil industry. They're sort of looking for, maybe concessions might not be the right word, but they're talking about partnering with them, while at the same time having a lot of pretty heated rhetoric about the industry and how they're responsible for the price increases.
We're starting to sense Biden's frustration on this. He's kind of lashing out in a new way at these companies. I mean, the relationship between Democrats and oil companies has been acrimonious for some time, but they're sort of, on the one hand, trying to extend the olive branch, pick your metaphor, inviting them to the White House to meet, to try to solve some of these issues, while Biden also proverbially boxes with them in public. He called the Chevron CEO sensitive this week, which if you're losing if you're doing that, most likely. And so it's been sort of escalating over time, but they're talking to each other. And Secretary Jennifer Granholm has kind of been the calmer voice in the room. Usually when she's in public, she's trying to be more sort of friendly to the oil companies, at least by the way she speaks. We want a solution, we want to cooperate, and so forth. And that's what she exuded when she spoke at the White House ahead of the meeting that she had with oil executives.
But it is sort of an interesting juxtaposition, because you do have Energy Secretary Granholm going out and kind of being conciliatory and talking in practical terms, and then at the very same briefing you have White House spokeswoman coming out comparing it to the Vladimir Putin's price hike, the president himself sort of calling for the oil companies to show some patriotism and sort of suggesting that if you don't, you're kind of complicit in what's going on in Ukraine. There's a tension there.
Yeah, there are compelling economic market explanations to prices that we're seeing right now. Biden and most Democrats aren't buying them, and they want oil companies to lower their prices, like lower than sort of what the market would take. And the industry keeps saying we're price takers. We're not gonna lower our price artificially in order to bring relief. We need other kinds of solutions. We need solutions that get at the problem, which has to do with supply, has to do with refinery capacity, and so forth. But certainly Biden is kind of leaning into the battle with this industry that Democrats have long had a not so friendly relationship with.
Not so friendly indeed. Thank you, Jeremy.
You bet.
You can read Jeremy and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.